Greetings, Earthlings. I got a request kind of to show how to convert a battery-powered Fluke 8050A, an option, what is it, option 1, I think, to run on without the batteries. And since I had nothing better to do, I went and I got went on eBay and bought me a cheapo meter. This came with, look at this, it came with leads, but no probes, which is a little weird. Power cord, which is nice. And there it is. And you can see from the little LED over here that this is indeed the option 1. This is a military version somehow. But anyway, it was cheap enough. And we're going to see if we can bring it back to life here. Right. Okay. There are two things involved in bringing it back to life as far as I'm concerned. One is eliminating the need for batteries. I don't need them. I don't want them. And the second is replacing all of the old electrolytic capacitors. Because as we'll see when we get inside this thing, check the date codes on some of the chips and see when, approximately when it was made. I see 8327, I see 8350. So this was made late 1983, 84. I'm presuming that the capacitors, electrolytics, of course, are the only ones I'm concerned about. The capacitors are original to it, and so they have exceeded their useful life. So we'll need to replace them, and then we'll need to eliminate the battery. This may end up being 2 videos as a result, because that may turn out to be more than I want to put in a single video. Okay. Teardown. I'm sure this is really exciting. This is how we take it apart. And we'll have a look at it. I'm going to take this off as well. Okay, as you saw, there were, what was it, 3 screws along there, and then the 1 screw here. Having done that, this should slide off, but it's going to get hung up because of the connector here. And then there are these wires here. But, so I should be able to get in here. And pull these. That comes off red. And this comes off black. Okay, and now that will flip over. Whoops, and there's a white one as well, which is the fuse. I've got enough access here. I'm going to put that screw back where it came from. Put that out of the way. I can just get in here and unscrew this at this point. So I'm going to want to clean those contacts anyway. We have 2 more screws holding down this plate. As we're still trying to get to have a look at the capacitors here. Okay, set that out of the way. Put these back. I like to put the screws back into the holes that I took them out of. That way they're less likely to get lost. Okay. And now we can see, here's the processor chip. Numerous electrolytic capacitors, a few tantalums. There's a tantalum, there's a tantalum, there's a tantalum. And we're going to leave the tantalums alone. They shouldn't cause any grief. The batteries are under here, both sides. And those can really just be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to desolder the leads and save the leads because they go onto these nice little gold posts. So if anyone should ever want to put this back at some point in the future, I'm going to make that as easy as possible. But then the batteries themselves are dead. How do I know? Well, I just know. And so we're not going to try and save those. There's some blotter paper here to soak up any leakage. Okay, now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this chip. This chip is static sensitive, and if it's not available, the only way you can get a replacement is by cannibalizing another 8050. So I'm going to take that out just to save it. This, by the way, is supposedly static dissipating material here. So I'm not too worried about static. I use a screwdriver to remove these things. You may have another favorite method. Problem with this one is that the crystal's in the way. Haha, but not enough that I can't get it out. Okay. So there's the chip. I am going to put it into this anti-static tube. You could also use some anti-static foam, for example. Okay, and that, remember how that went in. It was that way. So pin 1 is here. There is a little notch. There's a little notch here to indicate that that's where pin 1 goes. Okay. So now we take a look. Like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is look at replacing these electrolytics. And there's a bunch of them. But I've bought replacements. And in a couple of cases, let's see, C38 and 39, I'm going to upgrade, and I consider an upgrade, and I know a lot of people don't, but I'm going to replace the electrolytic with a tantalum. For the electrolytics that I'm using, they're 105 volt and 105 volt, 105 degrees C, and it's UHW. These are all Nishikans. There's some tantalums. UHW and UHE series, high temp. Again, these more likely to last longer. This thing has lasted what? 30 some odd years, nearly 40 years, and I'd like it to go another 40. Of course, they use cheap capacitors because it was built to a price point. And so only use tantalums where they felt the cost was justified. I don't know if I'll need that. Okay, so look here. C12 and C13, 470 microfarads. Okay, here are my replacements. And they have the same lead spacing, although these are larger in diameter than the originals. But the originals that they put in here are smaller than they allowed. So, yeah, and those have 83 date codes as well. Okay. Now, in terms of removing them, you're not going to like this. Well, some people aren't. I'm going to use solder. I have solder wick, and I have a solder sucker. And so I'll use those. No fancy vacuum cleaner soldering iron or anything like that. I do this old school, and I'm gonna try and do it without removing this plastic cover. Insulator, as it were, but we'll see. Let's see. There. The other one's back here. This is the other one. Let's check the orientation before we pull it out. Positive is actually marked, and negative is on this side. This is for C13, C12 is also marked. Okay. Now, to actually remove them, I do this, and I'd probably get fired if I did this in a real job, but for anybody who cared, but it works for me. Just heat it up and kind of tilt it out, work it out. Make sure it's fully heated so you don't take the pad with it. And that was C13 right there. And the holes look pretty good. We'll get C12 out. And proceed with caution. Okay, and that is C12. You can see that one is kind of bulging here on the bottom. The other one, maybe a little less. Well, it's hard to tell. It may just be the way the heat shrink is wrapped. But that actually, they both look a little bit like they're bulging. So probably good that they're being replaced. Okay, these are the replacements. 470 microfarads. I went up from, these are rated 16 volts, these are rated 35 volts. And that's just going to fit in there thusly. And plus and minus, okay. Plus and minus. Bend the leads over and proceed to solder in the replacements. Ah, here's the solder right here. Now, if anybody's interested, what solder do you use? I have this lifetime supply. I bought a pound of it. It's Kester. And this is 031 diameter. Core 66 is 44 rosin core, but this is 2% silver, which is just what I bought way back when and have been using forever. And I say 2% silver, it is leaded. It's lead, tin lead. I'm not rose compliant here. Okay, those are my two initial capacitors. And we will proceed, and I'm not going to show the whole thing because it proceeds along those same lines. So I'll just hit the highlights when we do the others. Okay, this is a good example. I'm looking at C38. C38, let's find it. It's a 47 microfarad, and I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to replace that one with a tantalum. So, look here. There's a tantalum, and that's the positive lead, the longer one. And getting to it, looks like it's here. Okay, looking at how it came out, minus is there. And, okay, that was plus, that's minus. And it is indeed marked. It looks a little grubby under there. Let's take a look at the capacitor. Again, it looks a little bulgy, and I may have taken a bit of the pad off there. I'm going to clean that up. With some isopropyl alcohol. This is 99%. 99% isopropyl alcohol. There you go. Just clean down in there where it was sitting. Alright, so here is where the solder wick actually comes in handy. The holes are plugged. So you can clean out those holes in theory with the solder wick. Now, that one looks good. That one still looks like there's some solder down in there. So I'm going to add some and try to... There we go. Okay. Nice clean holes. And as we said, plus is over here. Plus, that's marked there. So this goes in like this. And it has a different lead spacing than the original, but I'll make it work. Yep. Okay. That's looking okay. And there's our second capacitor. Done. Okay, I've just removed C39, which is this guy right here. It's on the input, stabilizing the, says there to stabilize the Zener voltage, and it does look like it's leaked. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, if it'll focus. See a little sort of blue there, and if you look at the board, if I can bring the board up, we are looking right in here, and you can see maybe that it looks a little cruddy there. So I'm going to clean that up, and more alcohol, yes. And we'll proceed. All right, I have completed replacing all of the capacitors. This is what the finished board looks like. The places where I replace electrolytics with tantalums are here, 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 and here. I did use an electrolytic, that was that 2.2 that I mentioned, 2.2 microfarad. I thought I might put a film cap in there. I did put an electrolytic in there because the film cap is just a little too big to fit nicely in there. These tantalums already existed, so we're not going to touch those. There's a tantalum over there that already existed, and these two, of course. So I am now going to clean up the flux with some alcohol, and then we will proceed to, well, the right thing to do at this point would be to test it. But of course, since we don't have the batteries, we don't have working batteries, I can't test it at this point. So we're just going to proceed to the battery replacement step.